Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. This is Yekemi Otaru. I am the co-founding director of Dukaru, based out in Aberdeen in Scotland. I'm delighted today to be joined by Gary Kemp. He is the owner of Doric Skateboards here in Aberdeen, and we're going to have an amazing discussion. We're going to be talking about his career journey, how he's managing a small business, and all the scoop on running a no-bull type of entrepreneurship, which I think we all need a piece of that, because the entrepreneurship life is definitely not as easy as it's painted to be. So really good to have you here, Gary. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Excellent. So what we're going to do is that we're going to maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing now, because you own Doric Skateboards, but you also you have another job. So can you tell us a little bit about your career right now, and then we'll go into the past a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Well, just now I'm work full-time for an engineering consultancy, Optimus Aberdeen. I've been there, this is my 10th year there, 10 years. I started there when I was 35. I went to university at a very late stage in life when I was 30. I was lucky enough to get a start at Optimus. But probably about halfway into that, when the kind of oil crash came, I started Doric Skateboards, and here I am today, into the 5th year of Doric Skateboards, which is quite fun.
Was it 5 years? Oh, wow.
Yeah, the 4th birthday was on March 31st this year, so we're into our 5th year, which is kind of, it's quite mad to think that. It's weird.
Yeah. It'll be good to really get into that. So we're going to get into, how you started it, why you started it, and some of your creative process around it. But first I wanted to go back. So, how did your career start? So where did you kind of start out in life? You came, went to school, came out. What was it that you, studied, and what did you go on to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, school, I stayed on all through school up to 6th year. Doing qualifications that don't exist anymore, like standard grades and hires. I don't know what they call them now, but I coasted, really. I never really pushed myself at all, even in subjects I enjoyed, like art and craft and design and stuff like that. I think I was saying to you earlier today that, at that age, I thought I knew all the answers, I thought that, a life would just happen, and I would find my way. And I went to college to do mechanical engineering because that's what the careers advisor told me to do. I spent 2 years at college. Again, just sort of never really applied myself, to be honest. I just coasted through. Ended up working in retail for a long time. I was working a part-time job while at college in a video shop. Videos, for the younger people perhaps listening, were the precursor to DVDs. And yeah, that took up 10 years of my life, really. Blink of an eye, and I was approaching my late 20s and decided to go to night school and get some hires and then go to university. I did construction design management at RGU, which was great. It was, I picked it. I very much was interested in construction and design and architecture, but it also happened to be the only course that I was really qualified to apply for. So I was quite lucky. But it kind of it woke up some of the kind of things in me that had been dormant for a long time. Like day one of that course, we had to sketch a building, and I was really into art when I was younger, like a lot of kids are, really. And that was kind of like a revelation. It was like, wow, I forgot what this is like. This is, being told to do something with a pencil, as opposed to just sitting down and thinking, right, I'll draw something. But having a project over that 4 years of drawing and sketching and designing was like, it definitely woke something up in me, which I was thankful for. Yeah. And then joined Optimus. Yeah.
You've touched on quite a few different things there, Gary, that I'd like to touch on, because, well, one of the reasons is it's really interesting. I think some of our listeners would be interested, and also because I've got a teenage son as well. And I think some of the things you said, are really interesting and important. So you talked about staying all the way through school and so on. So if you were to go back in time, what do you think you would have changed, right? Because there are a lot of discussions here around. So one thing is there are discussions around whether university is even really relevant. I've heard that a lot. And as someone who went to school a lot, you know, I don't know how I feel about that. So it'd be good to know what you think. And then the second one is around, you know, you talked about you're not applying yourself as much as you would have liked, even in subjects that you know, you liked, you enjoyed, and some of why you think that was, and what you would change if you could kind of go back there. Touch on that.
Everything. I've spent many a night up till 4 a.m. thinking about these things. I hear people say, you know, they've got no regrets in life, and I really kind of admire that because I have absolutely loads. If I could go back, I would do it all differently. You know, I would apply myself. I would find that spark. I think it's. I mean, when I say that, you know, and I think to myself, I should have went to university from school, but really, that would require me to be a completely different person. I wasn't ready for that. I'm quite an introvert, really, despite this and other things I do.
Despite me getting you to be on camera, Gary, I appreciate it.
I'm outgoing introvert. But when I was younger, you know, I was incredibly shy and wouldn't really speak to anyone other than if I knew them very well. So I can't, you know, if I say I would go back and I would go to university, it would be a total disaster because I wouldn't have managed. So that's a difficult one. But if I could, I would try, and if I could go back and speak to myself, you know, that's the things I sort of always think. And I give myself a kick up the arse and say, look, you know, you really need to get going and learn something. I find it hard. My concentration is not great at the best of times, even as I am now. And I think the last year has made it worse with COVID and working from home and all the distractions that kind of brings up. I think when I was younger, that was probably at the root of it. So yeah, I would definitely do that. I don't really know why. I never, you know, I think like art and stuff, I enjoyed it, but I kind of thought I was a bit of a rebel at times, where the art teacher would say, "We're going to draw an apple today." Well, why? Why have we got to jump through these hoops, you know, and you know, do the things that tick the box and go, right, you've done that, now you get on to do this now. And I just wanted to kind of do what I wanted, which I realize is daft because you can't just do anything you like in life. But I kind of maybe lacked a teacher that could have kind of got a hold of me, and you know, you remember great teachers, and I had great ones in certain subjects, but in the ones that I enjoyed, not so much.
Yeah.
You know, so
I think your experience is probably something that resonated with a lot of people, and I definitely resonate. And the subjects that I ended up really good in were the subjects where I liked the teacher. You know, the teacher made it enjoyable. And like math, a lot of people run away from math, but I became extremely good at math because I just was fortunate. I had almost every math teacher that I can remember right back to probably primary 3 were really good, and they made me enjoy math. And so I went on to do well. But I have friends who just didn't get on with math because of the teacher a lot of the time. So it makes a big difference. Thanks for sharing that with us. Gary, I just want to give a quick shout out to Kendia. You haven't missed much. We've just been speaking about Gary's career so far, and we've just been reflecting a little bit about his time at school and going into uni and so on. So no, you haven't missed much. Actually, I'm going to put Kendia's comment on here so everyone can see. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, if you're watching and you've got any questions for myself or Gary, please feel free to put it in the chat. Or if you just want to say hi, right? And do you have some thoughts about noble entrepreneurship? Do share that with us. So now fast forward to Optimus Aberdeen. And were you at Optimus Aberdeen when you then got this idea? I mean, you must have been, because you've been at Optimus, what you said, 10 years. So how did the idea come to you? What was the idea around Doric Skateboards? Talk us through that.
I was like a sort of perfect storm over the course of maybe 5 years from when I started at Optimus. My father had taken ill, and you kind of get a bit of perspective in life where you're just like, I care too much about what people think of me, so I need to do something that I enjoy. So I'd always loved skateboarding when I was a kid and into my late teens, and I thought, I'm in my 30s now, but I'm just gonna get back into skateboarding. I had no friends that were still into that, obviously. So I did. Met a lot of people online who were very similar, my age group, all having. I don't, I hate that phrase midlife crisis because it feels quite derogatory. But I suppose it's just, I think it's just sometimes you get moments where you maybe you just get a bit of perspective and you think, actually, I want to do something fun. So I'd done that, but then 5 years kind of in to work at Optimus, the oil price kind of crashed, and I was one of them up for redundancy, which luckily I avoided. But I think all of these things were kind of coming in,
conspiring together.
Yeah, I was 5 years gone from university where I felt like I'd awakened a bit of creativity. Now it was kind of dying a little. And so all these little things were kind of coming together, and I thought, well, I always fancied starting my own business. I'd looked at Gray's School of Art to see if there was any kind of, I don't know, creative short courses I could possibly do. Nothing really sprang out. And then this kind of idea for a skateboard company and the name all kind of came together. And I sat at work. I don't know if anybody works watching. I wrote the email in work time. Sorry, I emailed. I'm owe you money for that.
Sorry,
I emailed my brother. My brother's graphic designer. His business is 42 Studio in Aberdeen, and I emailed him just a sort of stream of consciousness. Just like I need something to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is why. This is what it's going to be. This will be the first design. What do you think? And I know people say don't ask relatives, because they're all going to tell you everything's wonderful. But because it was in my brother's wheelhouse, design and that, I thought he'll be honest. He'll tell me it's rubbish, or he'll tell me, look, sounds difficult. But he was receptive about it and said, no, that sounds good, go for it. And he designed the logo, and was being a bit of a kind of mentor for the whole thing, really. And from then it took me like 9 months from that email to get to launch, because I had to learn everything. I was on social media, but only as posting pictures on Instagram or whatever, wishing people happy birthday on Facebook. So I had to learn how to use that as like a business tool, to make a website, learn to screen print stuff behind me there.
Yeah.
I decided I wanted to screen print stuff really because of the traditional method of printing skateboards on clothing. I just made that decision, and I told people, which in retrospect was stupid because I put myself under enormous pressure. Because then you just think, oh, okay, I kind of have to do this now.
You can't stop now.
No, you can't go back. Although many times I wanted to, because it got difficult and challenging. But eventually, 9 months later, we kind of got there and launched. Yeah.
So you talked about the first email to actual launching was 9 months. Talk me through some of the things you were doing in those 9 months, so I understand that you were coming to terms with some of the tools and how you're going to use them as a business owner, basically. Yeah. And so what were some of the things that you were doing in those 9 months, and including things that were going on inside of you? You know what I mean? Not only things going on externally.
I mean, obviously extreme like self-doubt, just total lack of confidence. People talk about that imposter syndrome. Obviously that's I didn't even know these words. They weren't in my vocabulary. I didn't really know the word brand particularly, or entrepreneur. I mean, I sometimes cringe at that word anyway, but all these words didn't really mean anything to me before then. So it was quite uncomfortable. And yeah, all the sort of learning stuff certainly hit some brick walls and past dates where I'd set myself, right, I'm going to launch by Christmas. Well, Christmas came and gone, and it wasn't until like 3 months later. So there were many moments of just like, oh, this is, and yeah, where I think, oh, this is stupid. What am I doing? And I still have those every week. Like I still have those. They're worse at night time, at 3 a.m. when it's quiet in your brain. There's nothing to distract you from that doubt, and you think, I genuinely sometimes wake up. I think in the middle of the night, I think, I'm just going to pack it all in tomorrow. I'm going to quit. And you wake up the next morning, and you're like, oh, actually,
it's fine.
I'm okay. I must have had like a dodgy biscuit before bedtime.
They talk about the waves, though, don't they? I can't remember what book I saw it in, or maybe it was even a TED talk of the waves, and I've definitely had that as well as a business owner. Some days you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, we're going out of business. And it's like the next week, it's like, oh my gosh, we're millionaires. We're absolutely killing it right now.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster. It really
is. I wonder what it's like if it isn't. If you are one of these people who feel, that you hear them with the language of their killing it and smashing it, and I don't even know what that means. It's just like just words.
Hopefully, there's no actual killing happening.
What is the action there? How are you doing that? And most of those people sound insufferable. Although you could ask my partner, she probably thinks that my peaks and troughs are probably just as insufferable, to be honest. But I think without it, I think you need a bit of humility and honesty. Not interested in running a business that fakes success or happiness or satisfaction or perfection. All these sort of things that I see a lot of brands, similar small brands pop up, and I think, oh, well, they almost try to project an air like a huge corporation. And I think, well, you're losing out on what your business is, which is probably you, which is the key differential between you and a huge company is the values that you might have, your personality, good or bad, your character, all that things, which I'm happy to expose or put on display. It doesn't bother me.
I think we're getting really into this whole noble entrepreneurship piece is really what I want to get into with you now. And the comment I've put on the screen, Kendia, again, makes a really good point around becoming comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I think sometimes the entrepreneurship, people want to, starting a business, let's put that big word aside for a second. People get scared when things just feel uncomfortable, but that's the whole point. Like if you're comfortable, then you're obviously not stretching any muscles. You're just kind of, you're not stretching any muscles, and you're not actually doing something kind of remarkable, if you like. So I think, So I think when someone has a business idea, so say you have a business idea, we talked about your story. You had a sounding board with Mark, and so like for me, I have sounding boards with, I might show something to my dad or my husband or my sister. But I think that whole feeling that you have to pretend to have it all together, the fear that the idea might not be a good one. I know it's one that I come across a lot. People being really worried that, what if it fails? What if everyone hates it? And that holds them back. The fear that they just don't have what it takes, that maybe it is a good idea, but they don't have what it takes to see it through. And then I guess the third one I find is just feeling like they're going to be in a league of other people that they compare themselves with and feel that they come up short. Right. And I do think there's a bit of a culture around entrepreneurship where I guess if you look at the States and and Europe, or maybe the UK in particular, there's a slightly different culture around entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be great to hear kind of your view on that whole piece where you're going into something, you have no idea whether you're going to succeed or not. You just know that you're passionate and you know that you want to try something. Talk about some of the obstacles that people come across and how maybe you've overcome them, and kind of share your experience around that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think anyone starting anything, I never went down a traditional route of going through all the exercises that a normal small business might do, which is it viable? Is it appealing? Are there customers? What does your customer look like? All that sort of stuff. Because, I quite frankly didn't know any of that stuff existed. I just had an idea and I went for it. But yeah, I think problem solving is kind of like a key thing to have. You can come up against all sorts of problems, and you need to get past them. And I think one thing that I've learned is, like, solving a problem isn't asking someone else what the answer is.
That's a good one.
You kind of, because when you solve a problem for one thing, you're actually helping out the next 20, because not in the specific technical thing, although there might be similarities, but just in the way your brain works, just in the way you can be a bit more robust and have a bit more tenacity and a bit more try, instead of just finding someone who does the thing that you're having a problem with and saying, how do you do that? And they tell you, it's just you mentioned maths earlier. It's like having a maths equation and being given the answer, but you can't
have no idea how it arrived at that.
Work it out, I'm rubbish at maths, by the way. So I remember those sorts of fears. So I think problem solving is a big thing, and I think that's part of like any creative kind of process is solving problems along the way. I think I have, throughout this entire 4 and a bit years, there are times where I've walked away from problems just to get a bit of, you need some clear your head and get some perspective and then go back to it. It's I think that's kind of important if somebody's starting up, but also, not to try and take everyone's advice either, because not everyone knows everything about every industry, and they don't know what success looks like to you. So people will, maybe they will put you off doing something because they think, well, that's never going to work, and that's gonna, you're never going to make a living out of that. Well, you maybe don't want to make a living out of it. Maybe making a living out of it would be the worst thing in the world, because your mortgage now relies on it, and all the fun has evaporated into a spreadsheet of targets. And that's probably where I'm at a little bit with it, where I wouldn't want to have that fear. I don't think it's being cowardly about it or not having the confidence in the product or the idea. I think it's just people are motivated differently,
Yeah. I know we touched on this earlier. We talked about success and how success is different for everyone. Like what your definition of success is going to be different to someone else, and mine and yours will be different. There's something else you spoke about, the kind of the problem solving piece, which I absolutely agree with. I think the problem solving intertwined with tenacity. So the ability to stand up when you're knocked down, because it's quite surprising how many people just sort of stay down for way too long. And it could be that you get up and go a different direction, but just don't stay down. And I think success tends to come as a kind of a cumulative reward. So you've been doing certain things, you've been persistent, you've solved, all these problems, you've been, persevered, and that all adds up together in the end. That all does add up together. And one of the examples I use for this is, with a startup, I don't know if you noticed this, but somewhere between the kind of 30-month and 36-month mark, something tends to happen in a startup where you move a little bit away from really struggling for, I suppose, clients, trying to get known, to this point in time where it's almost like the world says, we see you, you're obviously serious about this. We've noticed that you've been doing all these things for all these months. You are a serious person. Let's have a chat. It's almost like that kind of happens, and it's like clockwork. 2 to 3 month mark, 2 to 3 year mark, if you like. And that is an example of this cumulative effect where you need to keep going and solve all these problems. And suddenly it just kind of adds up and becomes this big, kind of quite a big outcome. And like I felt it with my first business, your marketing, getting to that 2 year mark. And I noticed it was one day at my computer, I noticed that I was doing less kind of outreach. And I was getting, and having more kind of emails come in to make inquiries. And I just thought, wow, I felt it. It was obviously I was still chasing business, but there was something dropped around that mark. And
momentum. That goes with you. I think you're right. People, they buy into what you are or who you are and what you're doing. I think with Doric, the thing I wanted, because I didn't have anyone really particularly to skate with, I thought, well, doing this brand, I could build a little kind of community of people who are maybe like-minded, who are perhaps older or less good, just finding your tribe, finding your people. And I think that takes years, and it does. It's, as I say, I speak to a lot of people who are starting up things, and I think that they think instant success. They really think it's overnight. It's frightening. I think, and people ask me questions about Doric in terms of how much have you sold and how much money have you made, and I realize those are the metrics that most people just instantly revert to, and that's fine. But I hate myself for replying. I find myself justifying, and sometimes and saying, "Oh well, I've done this," and I think, stop it. I don't need to say anything. You don't have to
explain yourself. Yeah,
no,
I know what you mean. It's like someone saying, "Oh, how many followers do you have?" And I'm like, well,
I couldn't care. Yeah, I mean, I would rather. I've said it before. I'd rather have 10 followers who like me and engage than 10,000 who are only following you because you did a giveaway, or a free T-shirt, and they're never going to look at your stuff ever again. And it's kind of, that whole game. You can get caught up in it, and it's hard sometimes to
it is hard. Yeah, it is hard, and I think as society, those are some of the metrics that people look at, and I tend to feel like when I respond to this, like when I entertain those sort of questions and matrix, I feel like I'm encouraging it as well, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't found a smart response yet, like when someone says, how much did you make? Or
but that's when you show them a picture of your Lamborghini. Maybe that's the ultimate.
My borrowed Lamborghini.
There you go. That's the measurement. Not that would make me happy, but it does. You think like I spent I spent £1,500 over the course of 9 months to start, and that covered everything. But it took the 3rd year before I saw any profit at all. And I think that's pretty sort of common for that size of business, and that for most businesses really, because you're trying to build, you're putting the money back in, and it's another design for me, it's another T-shirt, it's another hoodie, it's another board, another collaboration, and you're building that, like you said, that momentum, you're building it for the future, and hopefully at that point, and it feels like the penny drops, and suddenly you're like, right, okay, it sustains itself now, and that's it. I'm off and running. That's it.
Yeah, it's like a baby. I mean, it gets to a point, and then you can kind of, you kind of let it go. I understand a lot, like on the creative side. I think with my other business, which I didn't mention at the start, my fashion brand, I'm definitely seeing that because I enjoy that creative process. myself and my business partner, we've put in far money than we've gotten out of it. And so if someone wanted to measure success by some profit margin, then it's not successful. But the enjoyment, the happiness on the faces of the people who buy them and wear them, for me,
that's immeasurable. I think I said something when I started, which I know it sounds really cheesy and trite, but it's true, is that I wanted someone that would feed my soul. My day job feeds my belly, and pays the bills. And that's no slight on that. For some people, their day job is both. They love it, and that's wow, that's great. But for me, I needed something that would feed that other part of me, and that's hard to measure. You can't really kind of, most people would roll their eyes and think that's just some waffle, but it's
crazy talk.
It just sounds pretentious nonsense, but it's true, And that's
absolutely. So I want to know more about Doric Skateboards. So I know obviously you're putting these amazing designs on the skateboards. Talk us through that whole creative process, and what if someone wanted to engage with Doric Skateboards. So are they buying a skateboard from you? Are they buying some of so I know you've got t-shirts, hoodies, and so on. Are they joining a club? So tell us a little bit about what Doric Skateboard does and the creative process behind some of what you create product wise.
Yeah, I mean the idea really was to celebrate the sort of northeast of Scotland in terms of the culture, the people, all that things, and for every design to be informed by that and to be inspired by that. So the first design we did, which you can see over my other shoulder, it was Annie Lennox, the Aberdeen-born singer of Eurythmics, and that that was the first design, and I knew that was going to be the first one I did. And yeah, I mean, I'm born and bred in Aberdeen, and I've always kind of been quite defensive about Aberdeen. I'm quite proud of the city, and I can see the beauty in certain things, the architecture and that sort of stuff. But I always feel like people are quite down on it, So this was my chance to sort of, put using the word Doric as well. Obviously, for people that don't know, Doric is the language of the northeast of Scotland, which when we were at school we would get in trouble for talking in because it was deemed slang. Or
oh really? You get in trouble for speaking in Doric?
Well, you couldn't use you wouldn't, and you certainly wouldn't write the words down ever. I mean, I think now we're at a point where we're celebrating that culture a lot more, despite the fact that for most secondary school pupils, they read Lewis Grassic Gibbon Sunset Song, which is a famous Northeast book, which has got some Doric in it. But I kind of wanted to just put it out there and say, look, this is Aberdeen. Now, I said earlier there was words I didn't have in my vocabulary. Like one of them was collaboration. Collaboration. Well, when I hear the word collaborate, I think of the words of the song from Vanilla Ice. Stop, collaborate, and listen. That's my instinct. I think so. So what I didn't see coming was collaborating with local artists. Artists I didn't know existed. I didn't know there were, like this kind of like community of talented people that would want to work with me. And so that's helped kind of elevate them, I hope, which, it's worked well for me as well. Obviously, we both brought something to the table. So that's good as well, and I think probably didn't really see Doric going beyond the Northeast to begin with. In fact, a few people probably said as such. How, like, what's Doric going to mean to people? Doric, what does that mean? I obviously didn't know their Greek architecture either, because it's that as well. But and I think people thought I'd run out of ideas. Definitely. In fact, some did say that, or just implied it. They just, oh, you're going to have to come up with ideas that are nothing to do with Aberdeen, because you're never going to
diversify into Spanish or something.
Yeah, it's like, well, what the idea of being a generic, you know, type into Google skateboard graphic and you'll see it's, you know, quite, but I think I've managed that, you know. There's Doric stuff in
for 5 years.
Almost every continent in the world has some Doric skateboard stuff in it. So, you know, we've done that. Putting kind of Aberdeen on the map and that in my way, which is maybe isn't, you know, it's not it's not millions and millions and hundreds of thousands, but in my own way, I've done that, and that was part of it, you know, to make something that you can be proud of, you know. That was some of the genesis of it.
So what's the biggest obstacle that you overcame, and what are you most proud of?
The biggest obstacle was learning to screen print. Screen printing clothing is difficult, but it's a flat surface. Okay, if anyone doesn't know what screen printing is, if you just check it out on YouTube, it's just pushing ink through a screen like the one behind me, like that, onto a surface. Now, on a flat surface, it's dead easy in comparison. A skateboard has a concave to it, so it's a curve. So that took up the 9 months of trying. My very first attempt, I got it kind of right, and I honestly thought, and it's quite embarrassing, I honestly sort of high-fived myself and thought,
love it.
I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to have a cup of tea, and I'll go back to it in a couple of weeks. Well, I did go back to it, and I made a total arse of it. And
do you still have it, like, you know, as a?
I still got some of the original prototypes. Yeah.
Nice.
And you know, and I thought, oh, I can't do this. This is impossible. And I just practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, and at one moment, I got it right, and then I got that muscle memory. And I just kept going, and I was like, okay, I think I've got this. And so that felt kind of quite amazing, really. And from there on, I've kind of developed my screen printing from fairly basic one color, small area to print, simple, really, to sort of doing 6 colors with multiple screens. I did that last year for one. So I'm quite proud of that, really. You know, I went to Peacock's as an art studio in Aberdeen, off the Castlegate. If anyone doesn't know, it's a little hidden kind of place. But I learned screen printing there. I did a 2-hour workshop with James that works there. 2 hours, and then walked out and forgot everything. You know, so I just instantly just like, God, what did he say about that? How did I do that? You know, and it was months later before I actually put it into practice. So, and I would say every now and again, I think I've got it. And then I realize, as people do this for 20, 30, 40 years, they still make mistakes. They still learn. So yeah, that's a never ending process. But I am proud of it when I see some of the stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
It's really good. I know we spoke before we started the live about how the older we get, the less we know type thing, always learning. And it'd be good to touch on that before we kind of round up. If anyone's watching now or later, you've got a question or comment, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll round up in the next few minutes. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things with entrepreneurship is people think they have to be a certain way and they have to know everything. And I think your story is really inspiring, you know, just going after it and figuring it out later. And I'm a lot like that. Like, I'll have an idea. I remember the fashion brand thing. I came into the office one day and I had an idea, and I said to, I think it was Anya who was in the office, I said, I've got this idea. This is what I want to do. And she's like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, she was in the office and I was like, oh yeah, I've launched the website. She's like, what website? I was like, the fashion idea I told you. She's like, you've done it? Like, so surprised.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, just do it, right? So
just do it, yeah. Well, that is, yeah. I mean, I procrastinate a lot, which is probably why it took me 9 months. But a lot of it, some of it was physical, learning to screen print, as I said. But a lot of it was just mental. Yeah. It's just, can I, should I, will I? What will the future be like? What all this questions that no one has the answer to. You know.
Yeah.
But
Will I
yeah,
fail or will I succeed? And for me, I think just going after it gets you the answer to that question much sooner
yeah.
than
Oh
just
yeah,
sitting around wondering. Just do it, and then
definitely.
you
Oh, I'm
know.
brilliant. I'm great at that. I've pondered many questions and stuff, but you until you actually go and do it, it's the only way to learn. And yeah, like you say, though, the older I get, the less certain I am of anything. My you know my opinions on things and my confidence, my knowledge, everything. I'm kind of, and it's not because I'm unsure of things. It's just that I realise that actually, you know what? No one knows all the answers.
Mhm.
None of them. None of the self-proclaimed gurus and experts. Um, yeah, just every week you learn something new. If you're not learning something new, then you know life could be
Yeah, as
boring.
I say, if you're not learning, then you're dead, really.
Yeah,
So, and even the gurus, they've got how they achieved their own success, which is fine to hear and to
yeah,
consider, but everyone is different. I think we spoke about this
yeah.
earlier, Gary, about
Mhm.
the fact that, what works for one person might not work for you. In fact, it probably is likely not to work for you unless you tweak it based
Yeah,
on your own, your own circumstance, your own knowledge, who you're
yeah,
trying to reach, what impact it is that you're trying to make in the
yeah,
world. And
yeah.
that's why we shouldn't just copy people,
No,
because we
and
have to be ourselves.
yeah, that's the kind of there is a cookie cutter maybe business model for certain types of business, but it's not for everything. It's not for everyone, and I think people shouldn't be put off by that or intimidated by it. I think if people were so successful, they wouldn't be selling how to be successful. They would just be running a business using that technique. It always kind of
That's
bamboozles
hilarious.
me. Why are you selling courses for £100? Just do your own business. So put all them to the side. Sometimes I can be quite good at just getting compartmentalizing things and just being like, right, that can stay over there.
Yeah.
Occasionally you let it get too close and you let the doubts creep in, but soon enough you swat them away and keep going.
Yeah. It's about keeping going, solving problems, like you said, being resilient, and not taking yourself too seriously.
Oh no, I don't.
So yeah, so it's really about that, and I have to remind myself of that often, and just keep going. And anyone who's listening, who's maybe got an idea, or you're starting something and you're worried about it not working or what people will say, what we're saying to you is just get after it. It doesn't actually matter. All that matters is that you're going after what you want to do, and don't be afraid to ask for support. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because nobody actually knows all the answers. So it's perfectly fine to ask other people. Gary, it's been amazing having you here. Thank you so much for sharing
Thanks
your
thanks for
story.
inviting me.
You're most welcome. I'm going to be back next Thursday at 1 p.m. British time, and I'm going to be with Zoe Adjonio, I believe it's pronounced, and she is the owner of Zoe's Ghana Kitchen, and she's an amazing chef and international entrepreneur, and she's going to be joining me live next week. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you.